to change its color in changing environments. So imagine now we could use this knowledge to transfer this to a real-world application in order to protect our defense forces. My name is Stejan, and I'm a first-year Master of Research candidate at IET SA, and today I'm going to talk about an active camouflage concept. Now, as a beginning, I would like to draw your attention towards the status quo of the camouflage. A camouflage is basically the use of any combination of materials or coloration in order to conceal from your enemy. Now, the problem here with these people, with the static camouflage paint or with the static uniforms is, when these people move from one environment to another, they won't blend in anymore. So, what if we could take these people, or a tank, for example, which is in the desert, bring them to another environment, and they could immediately adapt this new color. So the idea is to develop an adaptive camouflage application for the military, for vehicles, or for soldiers. And in order to do so, I'm going to use electrically conductive plastic materials, commonly called conducting polymers. Now, the beauty of these conducting polymers is, as soon as you apply an external potential to them, they can change their color, just like a chameleon. Well, for a chameleon, you don't need a potential, but so. And this color change is known as the electrochromic color change. Now, here we have an example of a prototype material, and you can see it has two different color states. One of them is light blue, and then when you apply potential, it becomes dark blue. Now, because this is an electrochemical reaction, we also need an electrolyte. And the electrolyte is basically the transport medium to transport the charges in and out of the polymer. Now, if you look at the electrochromic application itself, it's a bit more complex. So I have a device here, and Sahar, my colleague, will go around and we can have a look at the application itself. So if you look at the application, we see, let's switch it. We are using two different polymers because, as I've shown you before, one of the materials is transparent and becomes dark blue, but for defense application, we want different colors. So we try to combine another material. So one of them is called PATW and the other one is polypyrrole. Now what happens when you apply the potential and close the circuit? Then both polymers change their color. You can see it here. Now I also have a short video to show you, and this is the concept of this device which my colleague Sahar just showed you. So we start with a light green color, then we apply the potential, and what happens is you can see the change in the color. So it becomes dark blue. Thank you, Sahar. And the question I'm working on is how the electrolyte in this system interacts with the conducting polymers during the first switch in these devices. But why during the first switch? So this is what we typically see if we look at the literature at electrochromic devices. So over a couple of thousand cycles, this is just a schematic, but over a couple of thousand cycles, these devices are stable. However, there's a gap in the literature. The gap is what happens here at the initial switching stage of these materials. And what we see is, when you switch these materials for the very first time, it takes a very long time. So you have to switch them over and over again, and after a couple of switches, they get to the full optical range. And this is what we call the warm-up or warm-up time of these materials. Now, why is this a problem? Now, imagine, let's go back to the tank in the desert. Imagine the tank has to move from the desert to the tropical area. In order to gain a tactical advantage, the color change needs to happen as fast as possible, because you don't want it to blink or warm up between two different states, right? So, now, we were the first group actually who demonstrated this warm-up phenomenon. And what we see here is, so the neutral state is basically the materials without applying a potential to them. So we see this is the visible area, and we see the reflectance on the y-axis. Then we switch, we apply potential, and what happens is you can see the first switch we're getting a decrease in reflectance, what means that the color is getting darker. And then we switch the materials a couple of times, and you can see, if it works, how after a couple of switches, the reflectance decreases even more, which means the color is getting even darker. And it's quite significant. So after 10 switches, you can see we're getting a huge improvement, right? So this is the problem with the warm-up time. We also have a hypothesis. So what we hypothesize is because for the fabrication of these materials, so you can see it here, we're using anions. And for one of the materials, polypyrrole and PDOT, we are using different anions in the system. And also our electrolyte, which transfers the charges, contains different anions. And we think that due to the rearrangement of these different anions, that this significantly contributes to the warm-up time. And right now we're working on a solution where we're trying to fabricate these materials and matching the anions in order to reduce the warm-up time. So what we found so far is that the warm-up time is quite significant, and overcoming it is crucial for a defense application. And right now, again, we are working on a solution where we are trying to match the materials and the electrolytes. Thank you. And I would like to thank all the people from the thin film coatings group as well, and my supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you, Stejan. Any questions from the judges?